Hi friends, today I am playing with this watercolor paper that I've been using from Meeden. Love it. It's kind of an in-between the Artisto and my arches. So it's a great, another great choice for you. Although I'm going to do a little comparison for you, and I believe the Artisto actually has a really great, keeps up with this 100% cotton Meeden paper. And I've got our cold press, our hot press, and our rough. What I'd like to show you is how the paint behaves, so you can kind of see that. And I will be using my Winsor Newton paint, so there's no questions about the quality of my paint I'm using on here. If I can make room, I will also do a little swatch of using my MeiLiang paints, which are by Paul Rubens, which I love. But I'm going to first start with the Winsor Newton paints. So I love the Meeden paper. For one, they have all different sizes, but I really like these little 5x7 pieces. And these are on a block. So what that means is they are sealed on all four sides, and they leave a very small opening here where you can slide a credit card, or they actually even have a little tool they sent me. Don't have it in front of me right now, but and you just, this opening, you just slide the credit card in there and slide it around, and it releases the paper. So I wanted to use these, and I'll get an Amazon link for you for these because I really like this size, and I like that they're on a block. So we're going to start first with some color, a little variegated wash, and then we will go into, I'll paint a flower petal and maybe a leaf, and you can see how wet and wet works on each of these papers. I did do earlier just a sample, and this was my hot press. This was my cold press, a little bit rougher. And this was the rough. So we'll go over kind of the differences I personally saw in using the three different papers. For me, I typically use cold press. I just like the rough texture. Occasionally I will use the rough, but it's a little bit more pricey. So let's go ahead and start with our hot press, and then we'll move on to those. So this is that Meeden 100% cotton. And the reason I added Artisto in as well is because I paint on these daily, and for years I have tried Canson and Stonehenge and all kinds of student grade papers, and I'm telling you, this Artisto paper I feel is fantastic. This is 100% cotton. This is not cotton. It's 140 pound, which is 300 GSM, and it's cold press, but it has a wonderful texture. And so I know a lot of you say, well, it's not cotton, it must not work well. I think it is an excellent choice, and that's why I wanted to add it in here, because the Meeden paper, all of these I'm using are 100% cotton, the same, they're 300 GSM, cold press, hot press, and of course the rough. So I just wanted to show you how well the Artisto holds up to that. And of course, as you know, I love the little ring binders because I kind of catalog these. I fill them with different things for seasons, and they're just, as you know, can't say enough. But if you really like the 100% cotton, I think these Meedens a little bit lesser cost than like an Arches, which is what I would use for commissions and things, but a really great choice. All right, so let's get started. Again, I'm going to use my Winsor Newton paints, so no questions about what kind of paint I'm using. And just for today, I'm using, as you know, my favorite, my Velvet Touch 8 round Princeton brush. Has that nice short handle, and just love the feel. Love, love, love the feel. Okay. And by the way, if you guys take care of your brushes, they're going to keep their tips. You don't go, jabbing in with the tip straight on into your paints. And you'll know that because you'll have little drill holes in your paints. And when you're done just doing that to bring it back to a point, not letting it rust in your cups on the point, you're really going to keep these brushes forever. Love the Degatos I've been sharing with you, but they're like a quarter of the cost. So for a beginner, they're wonderful, but they will eventually fray. All right, let's get started here. I think, of course, I'm going to use my Quin Magenta because, as you know, that's my favorite color. So we'll just put some of that in here. And I'm using somewhat of a dark value. And what I'm going to do first is just that gradiated, variegated wash. So this is the smooth paper. It is smooth, but this is the hot press. It doesn't have texture. To me, the paint tends to kind of sit on top. And, that's not a good thing or a bad thing. It's just how it responds. Now I'm going to go in and add some water and just pull it down. So what I find, it also takes a little bit longer to dry because it's sitting on the paper. The cold press and the rough press are very toothy and textury, and they absorb the water rather quickly. So that's, again, not plus, not a con, it's just an observation. So I can still pretty easily move this around. So there you go. There is, I felt, now, some of you might have a different experience with this, but I always feel like I get more blooms when I use hot press. That's just me and my experience. So there you go. Now, what I actually wanted to do as well, and I was able to leave some room here, is this is the Winsor Newton. I just want to play with my MeiLiang palette. Again, I love this. It's student grade, and I have tried so many over the years. I always recommend this. It's made by Paul Rubens. I think Paul Rubens has excellent quality. So let's just do a little swatch here. Ooh, that is really, really concentrated, a very dark value. And let's just pull it down. And there you go. So I did use a little bit more water because that first swatch was so dark in value. And because some of you might ask, let's see, let me find their equivalent to a Quin Magenta. Let's try the Rose Madder. And then I'll do the Wet and Wet over here. So that's kind of equivalent to the Winsor Newtons, a nice pink. And let's add some water and pull that down. So what I noticed right away is, as I said, definitely the water sits on top a little bit longer. It takes a little bit longer to dry. That's just something I noticed. Now let's do a petal. So I'm going back to my Winsor Newtons, and I'm going to create a petal here. So point, press, come around, just fill that in. There we go. Now I'm going to go wash and rinse my brush, and I'm going to go into that with, let's do a blue. So let me grab some blue here. Actually, I don't like that blue. Let's use this blue. Okay. And I'm going to tap in. So this is our wet on wet. Now, if you do follow me, you know I use this technique a lot. So what I always notice on rough paper is, to me, this is just me, I feel like it doesn't blend as well, but again, that's just me, folks. I don't use hot press paper, so I'm going to create a little stem here. So right away, I'm not seeing it blend in there. And I always go in, it is a little bit, but pretty much everything's kind of sitting on top, where I feel like the cold press and the rough, it kind of settles in and moves around a little bit more. This is slicker, so you would think it would move a little bit more. And again, it could be just me. I don't use this paper a lot. And then I'm just going to tap in here with a little bit of blue, maybe a little bit of yellow, cad yellow here. Just see what we get. I don't want that to be too wet. So I'm going to let that blend a bit. And as you can see, I mean, I'm pretty happy with the MeiLiang, how that stood out like that. So there you go. We could do, let's just play a bit with the MeiLiang and do a petal as well, point press. This is what I loved about the MeiLiang. It's very vibrant. And again, I feel like I just can't go wrong with Paul Rubens. I pick up a little bit of, try to mimic that turquoisey color. And now I'll do the leaf, or the, actually the leaf and the stem. There we go. Point press. Now I used an olive green here, and that's a sap green. So again, just what I notice is on hot press for me, typically it is starting to blend a little bit here as it sits. But for me, the most part, it kind of sets on top in these little petals. Let me grab some of that cad yellow. So we can do the same as we did here. There you go. All right, so that is the hot press. And as I said, I tend to see I get a lot of blooms. To me, it kind of makes sense because it's sitting on top of the paper. And, you know, it's just seems, I get a lot more blooms. So there you go. That is our hot press. Now let's move on to our cold press, which now has a little bit of texture. It has a nice texture to it. That's just my preference. That's what I like. And we're going to start out again with that Winsor Newton. So let me grab again that Quin Magenta and start creating my wash at the top here. Add some water and start pulling it down. There you go. Do the same as I did with the other. Try to do as close as I can with both. There you go. So for me, I feel like already, and I know this is contrary, if you Google this, they say the colors seem brighter on hot press. I always feel like the colors are brighter on my cold press. Again, that's just me. Now I'm going to go in and grab that MeiLiang paint. Do a similar thing here. drag it down. There we go. I'm just creating that variegated wash. So this again is the cold press paper. It's going to take a lot more water because it's more absorbent, it's toothy, it's kind of thicker. So it does take more water, and I'll show you when I work with the rough, it really takes a lot of water. The paint here, to me, cold press, dries much quicker. It's not as movable. It's going to soak in much quicker and dry. The cold press this is still wet. It kind of tends to sit on top of the paper. Okay, so this is what we've got so far. Let's go ahead and do our petals and our leaves. One thing I will tell you is with the hot press, you are going to get a lot crisper lines. With cold press, because the texture is toothy, you're going to get a little bit more textury look. A little, maybe not quite as crisp lines. Now here I'm doing pretty good with that, but it will show that texture through the paint and on edges. These are very, very clean and crisp edges. So let's go ahead and do our petal here using my Winsor Newton, Quin Magenta, point press. There we go. Now I have to work a little bit quicker because compared to the hot press, this is going to absorb quicker. So I want to get right in there with my wet on wet technique. Now right away, I'm noticing it's going, it's spreading. Now let's create our stem. Point, just like that, and our leaf, point press. There we go. Rinse my brush, and I'm going to add a tiny bit of that blue in there. Trying to do everything as evenly as possible, because again, guys, I'm not trying to sell you on one or the other. It's a personal choice. I'm just telling you what I notice, and sometimes that may be contrary to what you know, maybe on Google or what have you. Added the yellow, and we could do the same with the MeiLiang, I suppose. Let's see. So this is the MeiLiang point press. My absolute favorite color of theirs is that rose madder. Now you can't see here, but this has a little bit of an edge on it. It's not crisp and clean and perfect because it's picking up a little bit of that texture. And you'll see when we go to, oops, I almost used the Winsor Newton. You'll see when we go to the rough, you really can see that texture. Point, there we go. Now right away I'm getting a quick blend here with that green. Oh, and I didn't add in that turquoisey color. Let's do that. But I'm getting a wonderful blend here. And this is the MeiLang paint, you guys. This is the Winsor Newton. And then let's do our leaf. Grab a little bit more paint here. Point press. I know my leaves and my petals look very similar, don't they? And grab a little bit of that yellow maybe. There we go. So we've got the yellow here. So for me, I just look at how much this is traveling. Now, normally I would kind of pick that up. I would lift a little bit and I would be blending here, but I'm just letting the paint do what it wants to do so you can see. Now we're going to go back here and just look at the two of these. So to me, this did end up blending. This is the hot press, but I've still got a lot of wet spots here, guys. I've got some more blooms here, and this is still drying, and it just has a very wet look. I will say, and I get this question asked a lot, I think possibly on the hot press, the color, once it dries, does stay a little bit more vibrant or shiny. On the other two, it just has a more of a matte type feel. So that is one thing I kind of notice, but I still think the colors are just as beautiful. They're just, the rougher the paper, I feel like it has a little bit more of a matte look to it. The slicker paper has a little bit cleaner edges and a little bit maybe brighter, not that matte feel. Okay, so now we're going to move on to our rough. Again, these are all Meeden. I love these little 5x7 sheets. And these are a little bit less than your arches, but I think absolutely just as good. I would use the Meeden paper for a commission or for a gift. They're 100% cotton and I love them. And the price point is just a little bit better. Okay, so we're gonna start with that wash. Let me grab my Quin Magenta. Trying to do everything the same here. Rinse my brush and just pull that down. Now the water, because this is so toothy and thick, that it's immediately sitting down, being pulled into the paper, because this is very thick, rough, textury paper. So I feel like I don't get those blooms because the water's not moving into the paint. It's immediately setting in. I got this beautiful wash, and honestly, I don't use rough paper a lot. I usually use the cold press. But look at this beautiful transition, and I didn't have to keep really going over it, and it's already drying. As well, too, you can, I don't know if you can pick it up in the camera, but you can see this texture in the paint. It almost makes it look grainy, but it really isn't the paint. It's more just that this has all those little textury fibers and little dips in the paper because it's thick. This is much smoother. So for me, again, this is a personal thing. I love that type of look. Let's go in there with our MeiLiang. Get a little bit more. You do, if you're using rough paper, you will notice you have to use more water than you would with hot press, because it, as soon as you put it down, it sucks it right up. So I can see, you can't pick it up on the camera, but I can see the texture of this paper underneath. Now I love that, especially for florals and landscapes. That's, you know, just my thing. I put a little bit more pigment on here, so I'm going to pick a little bit of that up. There we go. I like that feel and look. So immediately I'm getting a lot more texture look in here. It isn't as smooth. The edges, if you look here, these edges on the hot press have a very crisp line. This has these little tiny areas where it's catching the texture of the paper. So it's not a perfect crisp line, okay? Same with, this is kind of in the middle, the cold press. It also has a little bit of that textury feel along the edges compared to the hot press, which is very crisp, clean. So if you like details, you like that look, you're gonna love the hot press. Now let's go on to our petal. Go ahead and pick up that Quin Magenta again. And point press. So having to use a lot wetter brush. We go in before that completely dries. You got to work a little quicker, and we'll go in with the, oh, I want to stick with the Winsor Newton, and I'm just going to tap in. And look at how that spreads pretty quickly. So let's pick up the green for the stem. Point press. Point, do that leaf. And see there, I could see those rough edges. But I'm getting some really great blending here. It's textury. I can see the texture in that. So it isn't that beautiful, you know, smooth finish, but for me, that's what I prefer. Now go in with that yellow. A little bit more maybe. There you go. And I'm getting a beautiful blend. It's, I think it's just as pretty a blend. It's a little bit different than the hot press because, again, it's got that texture. Let's go ahead and go in and use our MeiLiang paints. Point press. Again, one of the things I love, love, love about MeiLiang is how vibrant it is. And let's see, let's find that blue. And just touch in. It's a little bit dark for me, but that's okay. And now we'll go to our green. MeiLiang point. Like that. And create a leaf point. Touch in with our blue. I'm going to go to the little bit lighter blue because that blue is pretty intense. There we go. And that swoosh of yellow, cad yellow. Let's get that in there. Oop. A little bit more. I really like the cad yellow swoosh. There you go. So this is Winsor Newton. Let me just write that on there. Winsor Newton. This is MeiLiang or Paul Rubens. Okay. Let me just set these all up for you. This is the, make sure these are all fitting in here. This is, again, Winsor Newton. This is MeiLiang or Paul Rubens. And this is the cold press. Let me write that up here. In case you come back to this for reference. This is Rough. And I don't think this is going to fit in here. Let's see, how can I fit this in? Move all my things over. I think I can fit it in right here. This is hot press. very smooth. This is Winsor Newton, and these are MeiLiang. This is Winsor Newton. So there you go. Now, if you can see the differences, hopefully on camera, and you know, I will link these little 5x7 pads for you. Again, these are the blocks, which I think is great because you can use a lot of water and it won't warp because it's bound on each edge. But so going back to, if you were to Google, they always say hot press is brighter. I think it is. I mean, I feel like the colors are just as saturated. They're just not as bright. They're not as glossy. Definitely on the hot press, you have a more bright type of look. On these, they're going to be more of just that matte look, which I'm okay with. The crisper edges, definitely crisper edges compared to the cold press and the rough, which is going to have more of a textury feel. You're going to pick up these little raw edges a little bit more. I think as far as the blending and the wash, the hot press, I feel like it blends just as well on the rough and the cold press. You may have to use more water, where you have to use a lot less water on the hot press because it sits on top of the paper. It's not being absorbed into the paper. This is more like fibery, cottony. It's going to pull the paint and the water in. So definitely with the rough, you have to use more water, and you will notice that. So I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions, you know, just reach out. I also wanted to show the beauty of those Paul Rubens MeiLangs because I think they're really comparable. It does come down to the MeiLangs, you know, light fastness may not be as long lasting as the Winsor Newton. You know, so there's some things like that, but for your daily practicing and such, I think those MeiLangs are great. And I will link, I'll find links for you in Amazon for these 3 different papers. And I would love for you to give them a try and, you know, see what your preference is. So hopefully that was helpful. If you have any questions, just ask and I will do my best to answer. And I think that's about it. All right, everybody. I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Hi, everyone. I forgot it was really important for me to add in how the paint responds on this non-cotton, not 100% cotton Artisto pads in our little comparison. So I really want to do that because I just I can't say enough about this Artisto paper. So I'm hoping I can add this on to the end of this video for you. So let's go ahead. I'm going to grab, as with the others, that Quin Magenta, and we'll do that wash, a variegated wash. And this, by the way, is a cold press, in case you're wondering. So we had a hot press, cold press, and a rough. There you go. Now let's go ahead and do our petal. Point press. Oh, got something stuck on my brush there. And go into that with a little bit of that blue. There we go. And now with the stem and the leaf, point, press, and our leaf, point, press. Can't believe I forgot to add this. I was really kind of adamant on that. And I went in with a little bit of that blue, just like our flower, and some of the yellow. Oh, and by the way, this is the Winsor Newton paint. There you go. Okay. Let's do, so I'm getting spread here, which I like, I love. I've got nice textury look here. I didn't quite blend this as well as maybe the other ones. Let's do our MeiLiang, see what we get here. So here's the MeiLiang, very vibrant, very creamy. Another reason why I love the Paul Rubens MeiLiang. And then pull it down. There we go. Okay. And we're going to go into our petal. Point, press. There we go. Add in some of the, my water's getting quite cloudy here. Hopefully it doesn't affect the colors too much. There we go. Now this is buckling a tiny bit because it isn't on a block like the others, but I'm still getting this beautiful blend that I like. It works for me. And then I'm going to go in and pick up that sap green and create the stem, point, just like that, point, press. And add a tiny bit of that blue. And our yellow. Oops. There we go. Okay. So let me see if I can get close. So look at all the blend and the flow I'm getting. This is the Artisto pad. This is the cold press. See if I can get both of those in. So I think honestly, and after using so many different paintings that I could offer in my workshops, from Canon to Stonehenge, again, all of those wonderful papers, the Artisto, I think, just to me, it's feels the same. It has the qualities, the blending. It isn't 100% cotton, but whatever they did here, I think is just fabulous. I get what I feel like is the same as my cold press. So I wanted to add in that Artisto. I thought it was really important because I get a lot of questions about it and people saying it's not 100% cotton. And if they see me do something, they kind of automatically think it's because of the paper, which I'll tell you, friends, it's probably me. And you can see just these beautiful blends. And this is a wash. Beautiful washes, lots of texture. It does take the water very well. This is a loose page, but it's not all completely warping. And so there you go. I really thought it was important to add in this Artisto paper. And this was the Winsor Newton. This is the MeiLiang, which, as you know, I also love. Light fastness isn't going to be, I don't believe, as good as Winsor Newton. So if you're doing a gift or a commission piece, I probably would not use the MeiLang. I'd use the higher end. Sorry about that. My paint was dripping. I'd use the higher end Paul Rubens brand. I shared this brand, which is kind of in between their professional and their MeiLang palette. Awesome little palette, reasonable, and that's kind of in between. So anyway, I wanted to add that on and just show you the quality of the Artisto pads. Okay, everybody, I hope that was helpful. Bye again.